By the end of this video, you'll know how to create cinematic videos for YouTube or full product ads like this one completely without camera. No actors, no film crew, no editing timeline, and no code. I'll walk you through the entire process step by step. How to design your characters and keep consistency across scenes, how to build your locations, and how to turn all of that into a commercial with sound and voiceovers. So even if you're completely new to AI video generation and editing, you'll be able to follow along. The tool we're using today is Higgsfield, and the brain running it is Claude Fable 5 model. Now, there are many video generation platforms out there, and plenty of them are good. So there are 3 reasons why I'm using Higgsfield for this project. First, it's not tied to a single model. It's one platform that carries the top models from Google, ByteDance, and others under one set of credits. So you can pick the right model for each task instead of paying for 5 different subscriptions. Second, it has reference elements. You upload your characters and product images once, and they stay consistent across all the scenes. And that's exactly the part that usually falls apart in AI video generation. And third, Claude can operate it directly through Higgsfield MCP, which sounds technical, but it just means that Claude's pushing the buttons for you. I'm driving the whole thing from Claude Cowork, and of course you can use Claude Code if you like, so most of this work is honestly just a conversation. And I know that a lot of you are concerned about costs and credits, so I'll show you exactly all the numbers on screen as we go, exactly what each generation costs, so you can decide whether this makes sense for your business or a passion project before spending anything. Real quick, if you find videos like these useful, where I show you what's real versus what's marketing hype, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. It really does help a lot. All right, now let's get into it. And before we start building everything from scratch, I just want to show you how using Fable 5 versus the other lower models would significantly improve the video generation, even though the actual video generation model might be the same. But the prompts and the actions that Claude takes in order to put the entire frames and all the moving motion together actually does matter at the end of the day. So if you just look at, for example, the comparative here, so there's a comparison between the same prompt given to Fable 5 and Sonnet 5 and what the output is. It's a bit of a pros and cons, but overall I do see that Fable 5 have better motion put together. And here's another comparison of a more real life shots where Kraken showing up at a port. And so let's take a look. And so this is again between Sonnet 5 and Fable 5, and Kraken coming out from the ocean and grabbing the coffee from the coffee vendor. And you can see that throughout the frames, and the filter and the lighting is a little bit different with Fable 5. I do prefer Fable 5 over Sonnet 5 in this case, in terms of just the quality of the generation overall. And lastly, here's one comparison between Fable 5 and Opus 4.8 output. Okay, so this one is slightly more comparable. I think they're almost toe-to-toe in terms of quality. But of course, if you just look at the quality of the generation and just the shot angle and the attention to details, it's a little bit more put together than the previous model, which is to be expected, right? If you're using a better model just to orchestrate the video generation, and we're not even talking about the actual video generation model. So just the iteration on the prompt, on what are the best practices, putting the best images together before generating videos, all of that Fable 5 does orchestrate all of those work together better than the previous models. Which is why connecting a powerful Fable 5 model, powerful video generation platform like Higgsfield is going to give you the leg up in making the best quality ads, the best quality videos that you can put out there. Okay, so the very first thing you want to make sure is that you have Claude Desktop installed in your local system. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to be able to access Cowork and have Cowork point towards a certain folder, certain projects within your computer. Now, I'm assuming here you have some familiarity to how Claude Cowork works, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. But what you want to do is, of course, then connect Cowork to Higgsfield through Higgsfield MCP. And the way you can do that is go over to the plus sign over here and go over to connectors. And what you want to do is go to add, and don't go over to browse connectors because you're not going to be able to find the Higgsfield MCP over there. So if you type in Higgsfield, you see that it doesn't show up over here in the browse connector. So what you want to do is actually go back here and go to connectors. Instead of just browse connectors, add a custom connector, right? And then under name, you just want to call it Higgsfield. And for the remote MCP server URL, what you can do is you can grab it from higgsfield.ai/MCP, and you can just copy the MCP URL over here. And don't worry about this, I'll copy the exact URL down in the description below, so you can just copy paste it. You don't have to come to this page. So once you have that copy, go back over to the MCP URL and then put that in there and hit add. Authentication browser will pop up in the browser that you're connected to Higgsfield to. So remember, make sure that you're registering to Higgsfield with the right email address, which is the email address that you're using for your Claude subscription. So in this case, the authentication will pop up, and then I'm going to hit allow, and then that's pretty much it. You can go back now, back to Claude. Okay, so once that's done, you'll see that Higgsfield is now part of the connectors with Claude Cowork. So you're good to go here. So the next thing you want to do is create a Claude Cowork project. So here I'm going to call it Higgsfield Beer Ad. So what I'm working on here is an ad piece to promote a beer in a certain style of commercials. So we're going to get into that in a little bit. So what I want to do here is add a folder. So I'm going to point this directly to a folder that I created. It's a fictitious ad for a fictitious product selling this is beer. And we're going to make an ad for the said beer, right? So I'm going to point it to Higgsfield-beer-ad. So I'm going to hit open on that. We're going to click allow. And then that's the name, right? Higgsfield Beer Ad. And I'm going to create project. So that's it. That is the project that's been created, pointed towards the folder that I created on the system. So here I've created a project for this particular fictitious beer company, and we're going to create some thematic ads for this beer product, right? So I'm not going to go too deep into what I did with the projects and stuff like that. Essentially, it contains some of the breakdowns of what kind of campaigns that I want to look at. So if I go over to this project here, you'll see that there's some assets for the ads that I've created. No images yet, it's just what I want as an asset. So as you can see, these are all markdown files, right? So it's just telling Fable 5 what to do, what to create, and how Higgsfield works. And of course, I'm going to share all of this in the description down below because it is quite comprehensive. Even though it's completely fictitious, I actually use Claude Code to come up with some of these fictitious information that a real company would have, right? What kind of brand messaging do they have? For example, this is called Blackwater Ale, AB 5.2%. So some of the fictitious information like that I just love to add in to make it look more realistic, like a real product. And so we're going to one-shot prompt this. I've asked Claude Code to create a one-shot prompt, which is comprehensive. And so this is a full prompt, right? So it simply says you are the producer and director for a 45-second cinematic beer commercial, A Pint Worth Dying for Blackwater Ale, a fictional demo brand. And we're making it entirely on Higgsfield. With the connector, Claude is brain, just telling it what kind of model it should use. Again, Higgsfield has a lot of models, right? So if you were to just go to the Higgsfield website and go over to video, you'll see that it has plenty of models that you can choose from Kling to Happy Horse, Google VO3, of course, and Google Omni, which is just recently dropped as well. A lot of models to choose from, but in this case, we want to showcase Nana Banana 2 as well as Seedance 2. And it just works very well with character consistency and stuff like that in the past. So I just wanted to use those two particular models. Of course, you can use others. And yeah, so it's also asking Claude to refer to the project files and folders, such as the campaign, what it's about, the brand. And let me just open up the campaign so we kind of know what we're building, right? So the campaign contains the story structure. Again, with any ads or any videos that you're trying to make, if you want it to be high quality, you definitely need to work on the script first. So you start up with an idea, and what happens is you turn that into a storyboard, and then after that, of course, you have to write a script. So because this is completely fictitious and it's just for a demo, I just had Claude Code do all of that. So it's just coming up with the explanation of what the scenes are going to be and a specific instruction of what the scenes are going to look like from which second to whichever second. And of course, you can work with Claude to do this beforehand. But yeah, so just to keep the video compact, I've done this prior. So what I'm trying to do here is a thematic commercial for the beer, right? So it's called Blackwater Ale, and recently been watching House of Dragons and Knights of the Seven Kingdoms. So I really like that Game of Thrones style of things. So just doing a Game of Thrones themed beer commercial. So scene 1 is trial by combat, and they are just these two knights that are fighting for their lives in the duel, the escalation, and then halfway through the fight, somebody from the tavern nearby says last pour, and they stop fighting and they go over to the tavern and start drinking the ale, and there's some taglines that show up. And pretty much that's it, right? We want to build an ad that is thematic in Game of Thrones style for the beer. It should be slightly humorous, slightly light, but at the start it should look like something straight out of Game of Thrones. So anyway, this is just referring to that, and then we're also giving it phases on how it should work, how it should build it out, etc., and some rules as well. So I'm just going to send it that and let it work with Higgsfield to come up with all of this. And again, I also shared the entirety of the prompt that I've given Higgsfield or Claude today down in the description below as well. So you can take that and kind of adapt that as well, because there's some important stuff in there. I'm just going to open this up again, like the phases, right? I don't want to spend too much time going through the phases, but some of these are pretty important. Like for example, the first phase that you're going to have to create any quality production is to have a base image, right? Because all these models, they're generating videos from something. It can be from text to video, which means you're giving it a description of the scenes, and then it developed the videos based on your description, which is in text. And that generally is not too accurate, right? Because everybody has a different take or perception based on the text that you're giving it. So the best way for it to be consistent to what you have in mind is to give it a base image to work out from, right? So if you imagine the knights are fighting in a certain environment, you describe that environment to a text-to-image model first so that it creates the image. And that's where Nano Banana comes in, because it creates those images. And then those are the base images that's going to be fed to Seedance so that it creates a video based on the base image. And that's how we maintain consistency across screens. So phase one is always developing the asset or the base image, and phase two, giving you the shotlist and deciding if the base images are okay. And of course, there's a voiceover part as well. Now you can use voiceover. Some of the video generation model actually comes with voice as well. For example, VO3. So you can use those voices. But a lot of times there are a couple of issues, right? One, they may be very off from what is showing on screen. But second is also the consistency across one scene into the other. The audio might change as well. So best practice is to have a voiceover or audio layered on top of the videos that you've generated after the whole string has been generated. So those are the important phases. But okay, let me just scroll down here. All right, so it's asking me to approve a couple of things, especially the first time you're using Higgsfield MCP. It's going to ask you for a lot of approval. So just go ahead and do that. But if you're tired of doing that and you just want to pre-approve everything, go over to the plus sign over here, go back to connectors, go over to manage connectors, and go to Higgsfield. And what you can do is you can do just approve everything, right? Create voice, so that it doesn't need to keep asking you for permissions to do anything. So I'm just going to toggle this over to allow everything. So that's easy. I'm not recommending that everyone does this because some of these are credit use. So again, Higgsfield is a paid platform, right? So there are some credits to the video generation, and you just want to make sure that anything that has a credit use, you might want it to ask for permissions before going ahead. Okay, so it's read through everything. So now it's ready to move ahead. Yeah, so let's go ahead. Okay. Right, so if you go over to the right-hand side, you'll see that it's broken down to the phases the way we have described it in our prompt, right? Phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, 5. Okay, and it's using all these skills. So yeah, great. And yeah, there's some skills as well that I put into the folder that I will also share down in the description below, so you guys can take a look at that. It's just some skills for best practices in video generation using Higgsfield's models, as well as some recommendations on what works for a medieval scene and stuff like that. Okay, so back to the Claude session. So it looks like it's generating a number of things. I need to agree to the terms and conditions here. So it's generating a batch of base images that I'll need to approve at the end of it. Okay, so coming back to the Cowork instance, as you can see, currently it's at phase 1, which is building the asset sheets, which contains the character, the base images of the characters, and some of the objects that would appear in the scenes. So this is a very important step to make sure that you have consistency across all your scenes. So you can look at some of the assets that have been generated, and you can either approve it or tell it to change. And this is the environment or the background of the scene that we want the duel to happen. This is heaven, and let's take a look at that. So yeah, so it's looking pretty good. I like the sigil over there, just a pint of beer with a pair of swords. So that's nice. So let me look at the tavern. Looks good. Yeah, cool. And one little neat thing is you can actually view all the assets has been generated directly on the Cowork user interface, so you don't actually have to go over to Higgsfield to take a look at this. Of course you can if you want to. So if you just go over to Higgsfield image section, you'll see that it's actually generating all these scenes that is also going to show up on your Cowork instance. But basically you can view all the images here. These are the base images that it's going to create the scenes from. Okay, so that's the tavern, that's the beer. That's the actual product of the beer, I suppose, in modern day. And that's the sigil that we saw on the tavern, so that's good. Yeah, it's still working through all of that, so we're just going to let it do that. But so far, I've been pretty impressed with what's been generated. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of iterations required before we move ahead to the next phase. So now what it's doing is it's rendering the assets, the base images that is deemed to be qualified or are good enough to go ahead to a higher resolution file. So she's getting the scale right, as well as a lot more details and a lot sharper images. So it's just going to re-render all of that before we move on to the next stage. Okay, so now it's gone into the motion test stage. So it's coming up with this clip just to test the motion. So let's take a look. Okay, it's looking all right. Seems a bit slow, but part of the prompt is for it to actually QA test and check the quality of what's been generated so that you don't have to go through every single scene that's generated. At some point, you are going to have to go and take a look and you want to approve and amend things. But at this point, it's just making sure that everything comes out over a certain benchmark, over a certain standard before you have to look at it. All right, another motion test is coming back, this time for the warrior. Yeah, that doesn't look natural at all. What about this one? I think it's regenerated. Yeah, that's a lot more natural. That one's pretty good. So now it's asking me to approve the sheets, right? So the 13 sheets are fine, right? So by sheets, they mean these images that was generated. And this one looks a little bit AI generated to me, but I'm going to go ahead with it. This one is actually looking very good for me. This one's good as well. And the characters generally are fine. The only thing that I have a problem with is this motion over here, right? It's a bit unnatural. So I'm just going to tell it the 13 sheets are fine, but the second motion test is unnatural quick for the warrior turning his head, right? So I'm just going to tell it that, and slightly going to regenerate the motion sheet for this last one. All right, so pretty cool. It's naming the characters now. Marin being the Tevin lady, the herald, Kyle is the warrior, the younger warrior, and then Sir Howick. This is Sir Howick at the Tevin, and previously I think there was another, Sir Howick at the battle. Okay, so it's generated a short list for me to approve. So this is just a list of the shots, right? So there's a description of what the shots are about, trial by combat, 0 to 8 seconds, scene context, opening of the film, active references, location map, optics. So this is very important because it's specifying the angle of the shot, what kind of settings in terms of light filtering and exposure. Also is describing the actions that's happening. And then there's the second shot, which is the duel, the escalation. And then shot 3 will be the Tevin lady, last call for the Blackwater Ale. And scene 4 is just them inside the tavern drinking the ale. And we end that with the tagline of the beer. Okay, so this looks good. So I'm just going to say approve everything. Oh, and the motion test from earlier. So that's now been fixed. Now it's a lot more natural. And he's just turning towards the camera. And yeah, it just looks regular, natural. So good to go. So one of the things that I like about Higgsfield is also it's giving you the full access to the voice model. So any text to voice model. And it's got its voice avatars here set up. So I'm not going to go through every single avatar and decide which voice fits who. That's the job of Claude Fable 5. So it's going to do that for me and come back with what's the best ones. So now it's asking me which voiceover I should pick for the narrator of A Pine Worth Dying For. So there's a couple of avatars here that I can listen to. So let's see.
Frothy, creamy, slow brewed in oak, in the shadow of the old keep, Blackwater Ale, for kings and everyone they fight with.
Okay, that's pretty good. Let's see this one.
Frothy, creamy, slow brewed in oak, in the shadow of the old keep, Blackwater Ale, for kings and everyone they fight with.
Okay, let's see what Arthur sounds like.
Frothy, creamy, slow brewed in oak, in the shadow of the old keep, Blackwater Ale, for kings and everyone they fight with.
All right, I'm going to go with Arthur because to me that sounds like the most impactful one. It's got that element of age and wisdom somehow in his voice, so I'm going to go with that. So we're going with Arthur for the voiceover of the narrator, and we're going to let Fable 5 figure out the rest. All right, it seems that the first clip is up, so let's take a look at that.
Let the gods decide.
Hey, for a first cut, that looks pretty good to me. Looks like we're on the right track, but let's give it a couple more minutes. Okay, so it looks like it came back with a couple more shots. It's actually giving me the whole thing now as a final handover of the Black Ale ad shots, A Pine Worth Dying For 45 seconds. And this is just a handover document explaining what's inside, what's the rough cuts, and what are the directions of each shot. But I think what we're interested in is how the rough cut looks like. So we can just take a look at what's the output. It did give us some caveat that there's no audio soundtrack at the back, so there's no background music just yet. But let me take a look at that and we'll see.
Let the gods decide. Last pour!
Frothy, creamy, slow brewed in oak in the shadow of the old keep. Blackwater ale for kings and everyone they fight with.
All right, for a first stab and a one-shot prompt, I think that's actually pretty good. There were a couple of moments that were kind of questionable. We could probably iterate that. Like, for example, the crowd in the arena just kind of disappeared halfway through, and there were some cuts during the fight scenes that were sort of unnatural. But in terms of the attention to details and the realism, I'd say they kind of blew me away. The sweat on the skin over here and the way the beer is somewhat spilled on the table over here just captures all the realistic details that we want. So as a first shot, I think it's 95% there. Of course, you need to iterate, you need to add background music, which all of that can be done via Claude just by telling it what to do. And of course, one way to take this further is to review every base images that were generated before it goes into the video motion, right? So for example, if they generated a base image with an arena that's empty, you probably could flag that at the base image generation stage. You can tell it to make sure that it has consistency of the crowds being in the arena across the scenes. That one I kind of skipped because it was long running. I just let it run. And because it was self-iterating before it actually pushes out anything to me, it actually spends a bit more credit than what it normally would. But let's look at the costs and credits of generating this whole piece. So if you go over to Higgsfield.ai, by the way, you can actually iterate and work on the project directly on Higgsfield AI yourself. As you can see, all the clips that were generated are all available on Higgsfield platform itself. So you can actually see and view the shots. But of course, having Claude run everything for you, it's a lot easier, a lot more hands-off. But just to let you know that you can do that with both the videos and the images as well, right? So if you go to the image generated, you'll be able to see all the images that were generated before in order to put all of these things together. But going into cost, I spent about 700 to 800 credits for this generation. And of course, this is because I did not have any characters. I did not have any base images, which if you are a running business or you already have a product, you might have a couple of images like that. But I basically had to generate the characters, the environment, the locations, all of it on Higgsfield. And that's why it took a little bit more credits. And also because it self-iterates before it actually push out anything to us, it actually costs a lot of credits just going through the images and finding that it's not good enough and regenerating that, as well as the video motion as well, right? So if you just look at the credits here, the audio credits are actually very cheap. It doesn't even cost 1 credit. And then obviously the video motions are the ones that are costing a lot more, 14, 21 credits with the C-Dance model, some of it 31.5 credits. So the image itself is 2 to 4 credits, right? Every base image that it generates. It's actually very cheap. That's why I always recommend making sure that you have a base image to work off from, because that's really cheap just to ensure the consistency. So all this adds up to about 700 to 800 credits. And what does that mean in dollar terms, right? So 700 to 800 credits probably would be about $15 to $20. The math is not exactly precise, but it's roughly there just from the pricing plans. So Higgsfield have 3 pricing plans, the Ultra, Team, and Scale. So if you just look at Ultra, the 300 credits per month is $99 per month. So you get 3,000 credits. So that generation for the whole thing from scratch all the way to finish, about 700 to 800 credits. That's about 15 to 20 bucks. And of course, if you want to iterate a little bit further, you might end up in $25 territory. But again, like I said, this is because it's self-iterated and also there were no base images at all to work off with. So it's all from scratch. So it costs a bit more. And of course, we're choosing one of the best models to generate this, making sure that there's more realism. And we're not intentionally trying to be token efficient when we're doing this, right? We just want the quality to be good. So there you go. With some improvements in optimization, you can probably push it down to $5 to $7, depending on the number of images that you already have and depending on the effectiveness of your prompt, right? I've seen some pretty good generations of that length, 45 to 50 seconds to a minute, at about $7 to $8 when it's done right. So that's it. That's an easy way to create and add quality YouTube videos with Claude Fable 5 and Higgsfield. And let me know what kind of content you'd like to see next down in the description below, and I'll get to that. And as always, if you find videos like these useful, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. It really does help a lot. And I'll see you on the next one.